If you've ever trusted someone with your whole heart, listen carefully, because this story might change the way you see the people closest to you. My name is David Mitchell, and what I'm about to tell you is the day my marriage and everything I believed about love and loyalty collapsed in a single afternoon. Before I begin, let me ask you one question. How well do you really know the person sleeping beside you? Not the version they show at breakfast. Not the smiling face your friends admire. I mean the person they become when they think no one is watching. For 13 years, I believed I knew my wife. 13 years of shared dreams. 13 years of birthdays, holidays, quiet mornings, and whispered promises about growing old together. I never imagined that while I was building our future, she was quietly planning my downfall. The terrifying part? It didn't start with catching her cheating. It didn't start with a mysterious phone call or lipstick on a collar. It started with something so ordinary that most people would have ignored it. A few strange banking transactions. Just one small inconsistency. One simple question. That single question pulled on a thread, and the life I thought I had unraveled piece by piece. The deeper I looked, the more I realized this wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an accident. It was a carefully planned betrayal that had been unfolding right in front of me for years. But even that wasn't the worst part. The person helping my wife wasn't a stranger. It wasn't some secret lover I'd never met. It was the man I trusted more than anyone else. My best friend. The man I'd known for over 20 years. The man I called my brother. Together, they were hiding a secret so calculated, so cruel, that by the time I uncovered it, I was only days away from losing everything. My marriage. My savings. My reputation, my future. When the truth finally came out, I had two choices. I could let their betrayal destroy me, or I could make sure they never forgot the day they underestimated the man they thought they had already beaten. What happened next is something neither of them, and certainly not me, ever saw coming. Before I tell you the details, I need to ask you to stick with me. Leave a comment down below and tell me where you're watching from, because we genuinely love hearing from our audience. And please, if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss any of our stories. This story is long, and it's detailed, and there are moments where you're going to think you know what's coming, but you don't. There are twists that you won't see coming. There are betrayals within the betrayal. There are lies within the lies. So I need you to commit to the full story. Don't jump ahead. Don't skip sections. Because the only way this story makes sense is if you experience it the way I experienced it. With confusion. With shock. With that slowly building realization that everything you thought was true was actually false. So let me ask you some questions. What would you do if you discovered that the person you'd built your entire life with was planning to take everything from you? What would you do if you found out that your best friend, the person you trusted more than anyone else in the world, was involved in that plan? And what would you do if you realized that you only had a few weeks, maybe a few months at most, to stop them before they succeeded? Would you go to the police immediately? Would you confront them? Would you hire lawyers? Or would you do what I did? Would you take the time to gather every single piece of evidence, to build an airtight case, to turn the tables so completely that they never saw it coming? Because that's what I did. And I had no idea, when I started down that path, where it was going to lead me. My name is David Andrew Mitchell. I was born in 1974 in New Jersey. My father was a mechanic. My mother was a nurse. They worked hard their entire lives. They didn't have much money, but they had something more important. They had commitment. They stayed together for 43 years. They showed me what loyalty meant. They showed me that when you love someone, you show up for them every single day, no matter what. That lesson became part of who I was. It shaped every decision I made about relationships. It made me someone who believed in forever. Someone who believed that if you found the right person, you stayed with them. You worked through the hard times. You didn't give up. By the time I was 35 years old, I'd built a successful business. Not by luck, not by inheritance, but by working, by grinding, by taking risks when everyone else was too scared. In 2008, right after the financial crisis, when everyone else was pulling their money out of real estate, I was getting into it with my best friend, James Crawford. We'd known each other since college. Over 20 years of friendship. And we decided to start a commercial real estate development company together. Everyone thought we were insane. But we weren't. We saw opportunity. We saw neighborhoods that people had given up on. Properties that people thought were worthless. And we bought them. We rebuilt them. We transformed them. By 2010, we were doing incredibly well. We had respect in our industry. We had money in the bank. We had something that we'd built from nothing. And then I met someone. Someone who seemed perfect. Someone who seemed to be exactly what I'd been looking for my entire life. It was March 2010. I was at a business dinner, and she walked up to my table. Her name was Victoria Chun. She was the cousin of a business associate. She'd recently moved to Connecticut from California. She was a financial advisor, and something about her just caught my attention. She wasn't the most beautiful woman in the room, but there was something about the way she carried herself. Something about the way she listened when you talked to her. Something about the way she looked at you, like you were the only person in the world that mattered. We talked for 3 hours that night. Just talked. And by the end of the evening, I knew I wanted to see her again. We started dating. We went to nice restaurants. We took weekend trips. Everything felt effortless. Everything felt natural. There were no games. There was no drama. It all felt so easy, which should have been my first red flag, but I didn't catch it. By November 2010, I proposed to her. She said yes. We got married the following June, and I genuinely believed that I was the luckiest man alive. I thought I'd finally found someone who understood me, someone who wanted to build a life with me, someone who loved me the way I loved her. We bought a house in Greenwich, Connecticut. It was beautiful, expensive, over $2.8 million. I thought I was building a home with the woman I loved, but I didn't know, and I wouldn't find out for 6 years, that my wife was already planning something. Something calculated, something intentional, something designed to destroy me completely. The first few years of our marriage seemed perfect. We traveled. We hosted dinner parties. Victoria was an incredible hostess. Everyone loved her. Everyone told me how lucky I was. And I believed them. But by year 4, something started to shift. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but it was there. My best friend, James, started coming around more often. He'd broken up with his girlfriend. He was going through a hard time. And Victoria was incredibly supportive of him. She'd make him dinner. She'd listen to him talk about his pain. She'd comfort him when he was sad. I remember thinking that this was a beautiful thing. My wife being there for my best friend. What could be better than that? What could be more meaningful than having the two people you care about most in the world getting along and helping each other through difficult times? I was so naive. So completely, utterly naive. By year 5, I started noticing small things. Victoria would mention James constantly in our conversations. She'd reference things he'd said. She'd ask for his advice on decisions we were making. I'd come home from work sometimes and find them talking in hushed voices in the kitchen. They'd stop talking when they saw me. They'd separate. They'd act casual. But there was something in the air. Something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Something that made my stomach feel uneasy. But I didn't want to be that guy. The jealous husband. The paranoid guy who doesn't trust his wife. So I kept quiet. I ignored the feeling. And in ignoring it, I allowed something to grow that would eventually destroy everything I'd built. It was March 2017 when I first noticed something that seemed genuinely odd. I was reviewing our bank statements for a presentation I was giving, and I saw something that didn't match up. Money was being transferred out of our joint account. Not large amounts at first. $5,000 here, $8,000 there. But it was happening regularly, and I didn't know where it was going. When I asked Victoria about it, she had an explanation ready. She said she was investing it. She said she wanted to build her own financial independence. She said she was sorry for not telling me, but she didn't want to bother me because I was so stressed about a big business deal. She touched my arm. She looked me in the eye. She smiled. And she lied to me. I believed her because I wanted to believe her. Because I didn't want to think that my wife was being deceptive. Because the thought that she might be hiding something from me was too painful to contemplate. So I accepted her explanation. I moved on. But that money kept moving. Month after month. Small amounts. Just under the threshold that would trigger bank alerts. I found out later that over 6 months, nearly $200,000 had been moved out of our account. But at the time, I didn't know that. At the time, I thought everything was fine. I thought my marriage was solid. I thought Victoria was the woman I'd married. I was wrong on all counts. By September 2017, that uneasy feeling I'd had for so long finally turned into something concrete. I couldn't explain it, but I knew something was wrong. The money transfers were bothering me. The way Victoria sometimes acted around James was bothering me. The feeling that I was missing something crucial was eating away at me. So I did something that surprised even myself. I hired a private investigator. I told him I needed to know where my wife was spending her time. I told him I needed to know what she was doing with our money. He told me it would take 2 weeks. It took 4 days. When the investigator came back to my office with his report, I thought I was prepared for anything. I wasn't. Inside that folder were photographs. Dozens of photographs. Victoria and James at a hotel. The same hotel. the Marriott off Route 1. And they weren't just there once. They were there every Thursday afternoon, 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, the same time, every single week, for 14 months. And there were other locations too. A boat, a cabin upstate, even my own office building. They'd used an empty conference room on weekends. In that moment, sitting in my office, looking at those photographs, I felt like someone had reached into my chest and pulled my heart out. But as devastating as the infidelity was, it wasn't the worst part. The worst part came when I decided to dig deeper into the finances. I hired a forensic accountant, and what he found made the betrayal look like a small thing. What he found was criminal. Victoria had opened credit lines in my name. Not one, not two, but 3 separate lines of credit, totaling $4.2 million. She'd forged my signature. She'd maxed out all 3 lines. And the money was going somewhere. Somewhere hidden. Somewhere I couldn't see. An offshore account in the Cayman Islands. An account that she and James controlled together. Over 6 years, they'd accumulated $6.2 million in that account. $6.2 million that belonged to me. But then the accountant found something else. A document on Victoria's laptop. A Word document. It was titled Exit Strategy. When I read that document, I felt my entire body go cold. Victoria had written out their entire plan. Every phase. Every step. Every timeline. Phase 1 was establishing the accounts and moving money. Status, complete. Phase 2 was increasing the debt. They wanted to get the total debt up to $10 million. Status, ongoing. Phase 3 was filing for divorce. She was going to claim that I'd emotionally abandoned her, that I'd been abusive, that I'd hidden assets. Status, scheduled for year 8. Phase 4 was disappearing, taking the money, running away with James to Argentina or Costa Rica, countries with no extradition treaties. Status, planned for end of year 8. I was in year 7. Victoria was about to file for divorce. She was about to execute the final phase of a plan that would have left me destroyed. And once she filed for divorce, once she claimed I'd abused her, once she went to court with her allegations, I would have had no way to protect myself. Even if I tried to expose her, people would think I was just a jealous husband trying to punish his ex-wife. She'd planned it perfectly, or at least, she thought she had, because she didn't know that I'd found out. She didn't know that I had evidence of everything. She didn't know that I was about to turn the tables on her in a way she never expected. On October 15, 2017, Victoria came home from work. I knew what was happening. She was carrying a folder. Divorce papers. She was going to file the next morning. She was going to walk into a lawyer's office and start the process of legally destroying me. I sat at the kitchen table and I told her that I knew everything. I told her about the Cayman Islands account. I told her about the forged credit lines. I told her about James. I told her about the exit strategy document. And I told her something else. I'd already filed a police report. She had a choice. She could cooperate, come clean, and I'd recommend leniency. Or she could fight it, and I'd press every charge to the maximum. The look on her face when I said that was something I'll never forget. All the charm drained away. All the sophistication vanished. For the first time in years, I saw the real Victoria. And she was terrified. She actually tried to run that night. She packed a bag. She tried to leave. But I'd had the house monitored. Police were waiting at the front door. She was arrested for felony fraud and identity theft. James was arrested at his office the next morning. Their carefully constructed plan collapsed in a single day. Everything they'd been planning for 6 years, everything they thought was foolproof, it all fell apart because I decided to fight back instead of being a victim. The trial took 8 months. Victoria tried to claim she was a victim. She said James had manipulated her. She said I'd driven her to it through emotional abuse. But the evidence was overwhelming. Email chains between her and James showed them laughing about the plan. A phone recording showed them discussing how to deceive me. The exit strategy document was in her own handwriting. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Just 3 hours. They found Victoria guilty on all counts. They found James guilty of fraud and conspiracy. Victoria was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. James got 6 years. They were ordered to pay $8.2 million in restitution. Of course, they've never paid a cent. But here's what nobody talks about. Winning doesn't feel the way you think it will. I won in court. I got the house. I got 80% of our assets. She got nothing. But I also lost $2 million to debt she created. I lost my best friend. I lost 13 years of my life to someone who never existed. And no court victory could fix any of that. 5 years later, I've rebuilt my business. I've taken it public. It's doing better than it ever did when James was my partner. But more importantly, I've rebuilt myself. I'm not the trusting guy I used to be. I'm not naive anymore. But I'm also not bitter. I'm just wise. I know now that the person you love most can be the one who hurts you worst. I know that trust has to be earned, not given freely. I know that red flags exist for a reason. And most importantly, I know that I'm strong enough to survive anything. Victoria was released from prison recently. And you know what I felt? Relief. Because I finally let her go. She's no longer part of my story. She's just a cautionary tale. 13 years of lies. But a lifetime of healing. And that's a victory worth celebrating. Thank you for listening. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe to Scars and Stories, so you never miss any of our upcoming stories.